Hi, I'm Earl Knudsen.
I'm George.
And you know what? We're going to talk on the areas of holding title, and we're going to try to talk a little bit about FERPTA. And we don't want to take away any thunder or fun for all of you that are showing homes to someone who might be a visitor to the United States and wants to come buy a beautiful home here in Arcadia. But we're going to try and cover a little bit on foreign investors and taxation. When you're selling them a home, it's not your first thought to advise people that maybe they should consult an accountant or regarding the property. But the situation is, if you have an investor come from overseas who is not a U.S. citizen and they buy a primary residence, when they sell the home, they are subject to withholding tax of the price of the home that they sell it for. Under $1 million, it is,
I believe it's 30%.
30%. Over $1 million to 1.5, I think it was 15%.
Yeah, I think it bumps up by 5%.
So it's a major hit on somebody's equity on the home. And the money is gone bye-bye.
Yeah.
18 months. Because you figure if you're selling the home this week, they're going to file it in 2017 tax. So they won't see the money again for a long time, especially if they needed to buy something back overseas. It's a big hit. How can you prevent that? Before you put the home on the market, the client should get an ITIN, ITIN number, which is a substitute for a Social Security number. It is a tax ID number. And then they should have a qualified accountant. They can process the application based on what the tax liability is, probably within 3-4 months.
Yeah, I think what the hard part about it and the obstacle is you have to certify a passport for a foreign investor, and that's usually what takes the most time. I've heard that it could take up to a couple of years to actually obtain a tax identification number. So the sooner you start, the better. If you know you're going to be selling in the near future and you're not in the country, you're not a U.S. citizen,
right,
you should seek some legal advice, especially from a tax attorney probably, and they would be able to walk you through the process of being able to get a tax identification number. So when you are ready to sell,
you need to have the client's passport verified. This is a step that's done with the government. The client does not give anybody their passport. There's a process you go through to have it, and you don't just photocopy it. The government won't accept that either. It has to be a certified copy. And there are steps that you follow from the accounting office, and you can get it quicker. But it does cost about $400 to have it done correctly. But there's one other little catch here too. You have to advise some of these investors that are coming that they need to go through this process as well once they buy income property. Many are buying homes in the Inland Empire all around to rent them out. Well, they may not be U.S. citizens, but tax is owed on the income from the rent.
Yeah, the property's here.
So. It's here. It's taxable. Uncle Sam's going to want it.
Absolutely.
And this process is the same. They have to get their passport verified, and they have to get the ITIN number. And then when they sell that property at a later date, it'll be very easy for them to get the return right away because they'll have tax returns with the ITIN number. By the way, if your client says, oh, I already have an ITIN number, ask them when, because they expire after 2 years.
Absolutely. If you don't use the ITIN number to prepare your taxes and such, it's just sitting there. You might want to check with the IRS to make sure that it's still active, because you might be under the impression that you got it a while ago.
Yeah, 3 years and they revoke it.
Yeah, you go to sell.
And you have to do the process exactly all over again. The larger, more important thing is referring them to someone to consult on how to hold title.
Absolutely. That's one of the most important things to remember, especially if you're going to be a foreign investor and you have a couple of rental properties. The last thing you want to do is give the liability to your family members. If by heaven forbid something happened to you, then your family is going to be liable for the taxes and everything that's owed on the property. So holding title and the way you hold it is very, very imperative.
Right. I want the agents to realize that if you advise someone how to hold title, you've just given legal advice, and that's illegal. So you always have to make them aware of what the choices may be, but that they need to consult a professional service, either their tax or a legal counsel, on their final decision. If they're going to open a trust, an irrevocable family trust, they're going to need to speak with an attorney anyway.
Absolutely. So that would be the time to ask the questions that need to be asked as far as what they recommend title. And depending on your situation, they're going to give you the right advice. Rental properties as well. If you don't take the proper procedure, get the ITIN number, and you're collecting rent, the liability is going to fall back on the tenants and the property manager, believe it or not.
I can't emphasize enough to the agents that have clients, if you are picking up the rent, you are the property manager. And the code on the tax code is that the property manager can be held liable for the taxes owed on the property that were supposed to be in escrow withholding. According to the attorney that we saw right now in the code, even the tenant is liable. Don't ask us why.
We don't make things up.
But even the IRS has made sure that they're going to get the money if they know about the transaction. They have everyone tied to that liability. So it's very serious, and make sure the escrow knows the situation. Joint tenants can also take property as community property. So a husband and a wife get what is called the stepped up basis, meaning if one of the spouse dies at the time of death, there is an appraisal. The survivor can have that as the new basis for the sale price. There's only one other way to have that step up value, and that's through a living trust. And that is the best way to hold title. For one, you can have multiple properties in a living trust.
Absolutely.
The second reason is you can have one beneficiary to handle everything, or two. You can have multiple beneficiaries to handle everything for a family of 5 or 6. And you can specify in detail what the percentages are. So the best possible way to hold title is a living trust.
I would have to agree too. And also, for more emphasis, if you don't put it in a trust and something were to happen to you, you go through the probate process, which is a painful process. It's going to be costly as well as time consuming. And the last thing you want to do is to leave your family to have to deal with it.
George, do we require FIRPTA?
We do.
We do.
FIRPTA form is very important. Some people, I don't know if it's because they don't understand the form, so they figure it's not relevant, but when you talk about foreign investors, as we are now, you'll get a better understanding.
I think I got a feeling from some of you that the reason I don't find a properly executed and filled out FIRPTA in the file is because nobody likes dealing with somebody else's social security number. Some agents will white out or cover up some parts of the social security number.
Yeah, which is okay as long as we have it on file.
We know this is okay at this point in time because who's assumed most of the liability with the FIRPTA is now the escrow.
Absolutely. Because
they have to execute one in escrow. What forms are acceptable substitutes for the FIRPTA form?
There's actually a form called the QS, the Qualified Substitute INZIP forms.
Bingo.
And there, it's not going to ask you for a social security number. I believe in the form it actually stipulates that the escrow is going to be responsible for the tax withholding. Yeah. It's just an acknowledgement to serve that, okay, you're aware of the FIRPTA law.
And there's one other form escrow will provide, and you have to ask to make sure that you get it.
It's the tax form, the 593C. Which basically you're telling them, okay, I went through the proper procedure. If you're not familiar with the form now, when you do see the 593C or the FIRPTA, you'll probably recognize it and just never knew the meaning behind the form.
We're not accountants. We're not giving accounting advice. We're not lawyers. We're not giving legal advice. But at the same time, tax withholding, tax laws are coming into our industry and placing more burden on us. The AS form was actually, required from federal government. It's not a form that we originated. It's that they told us to have.
So, if you have investors that are wanting to purchase here that are non-U.S. citizens, don't let it discourage you. Yeah. Just remember to do it properly, get legal advice, make sure you're asking the right people the right questions, and you should be okay.
For this segment, I think we've covered FIRPTA fairly well. If you have more questions on FIRPTA or some of these details you've seen, you can always email us at support@urelosangeles.com.
Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in our next segment.